clinician, hello, let's not greet each other and please don't say anything. And nothing I say here today is clinical advice for any of you. But I want to definitely hammer home that while we're going to be talking about aspects of ourselves like courage or comedic timing or various other aspects of ourselves when it comes to social engagement, it's not the same as doing therapy with your friends and with your table mates, and it's not going to be ethically fair or consensual to that situation. Anyways, if you want that kind of a situation, please check out our good friends at Game to Grow. They do therapeutic D&D and other games, so that's a great resource for that, and that does actually ethically exist. So, a little bit about Take This. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded in 2012, and we are best known for the room right down the hall here, the AFK room, the most boring room in the convention by design. It is a great place to take a break if you need one, and also we do lots more than just a really quiet, boring room. We do everything from outreach and workshops on mental health in the games industry and the game enthusiast community, to having streaming ambassadors and spreading the word, educating and advocating for mental health in those spaces. So, without further ado, why don't we start off introducing ourselves. I've already introduced myself other than the fact that I use she, her pronouns, so maybe we can go down the line and everybody else can introduce themselves.
My name is Brian Kunde. I'm a licensed clinical social... I'm a licensed clinical social worker from Texas. I'm GaymerX's Culture and Operations Director, and I'm also a workshop consultant with Take This. We will get my Twitter up later. And the same disclaimer, not your therapist, not doing therapy here. You're good. Same exact stuff. Any advice I give is not clinical. I'm actually not even licensed in this state, so technically there's nothing I say can be considered advice.
I'm not a therapist or clinician. Please don't listen to me. My name is Tanya DePass, Cypher of TTRPGs Online. I am a Take This stream ambassador and also on the board of Take This. I stream on Twitch. I'm part of Waterdeep with LaTia and Eugenio. I'm on the Black Dice Society. And for my stream, what we do is we have a running command with Take This's info, should you need any help. But also, I remind people, as Sarah said, that even if you are a clinician or psychologist, a streamer is not your clinician or psychologist. Please remember that, and we'll talk about it more, I'm sure, but it's what I do. I try to be a nice person online, but there is a difference between nice and kind.
Hi, I'm Lauren Urban. I am the content coordinator for Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. Video games are also not your therapist. I use she, her pronouns, and we are a very big supporter and fan of Take This and the work that they do, and I am just happy to be here.
Hi everybody, my name is LaTia Jacquise. I am the Community Relations Coordinator for Monte Games. I am a TTRPG streamer along with Tanya, Lauren, and Eugenio. I am a former massage therapist, and massage therapists are also not your clinical therapists.
And I'm Eugenio Vargas. I'm DM Jazzy Hands. I'm a streamer on Twitch. I am the storyteller of Into the Motherlands, and just finished out my season as co-DM of Rivals of Waterdeep. Also a freelance writer and designer for Wizard of the Coast and Green Ronin and a couple of other companies. And I sometimes am a music director, and that's also not your therapist.
Excellent. Well, now that we've firmly established that this is not therapy and none of us are your therapists, why don't we start off with something that, so for background, in psychology, I have my degree in psychology, and I've always been curious about the way we understand ourselves through our avatars in games. And so, of course, my first question is, what is a character that you've played, and what did you learn about yourself in the process?
I like how none of us spoke.
Do we need to roll for initiative now?
All right, here we go. Why not?
I got a 13 because I have a +4.
Oh. I got 6.
Are we actually rolling initiative?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, it's a better way.
I got a 13.
10.
Oh, we have to fight then, Lauren.
Oh no.
What's your dex?
My +2.
You can't see it, but they brought up their character sheets on D&D Beyond.
Am I answering as me or Sophie's?
I'm answering as both me and or Kira, so.
Then you go first.
Okay, I will go first. I have been playing this cleric for a very long time, and there's a lot of things that Orkira has taught me and has helped me with, and it's interesting to think back about how much I have gained because of her, but I think the biggest thing that I don't actually get to talk about very often, she is terrified of being alone. She's absolutely terrified of it. And much of the decisions that she makes were based on being with people and not being alone. And the last couple of years during the pandemic, I realized that same kind of thing, not to this extent, but that idea of being isolated and being alone and how much I was scared of that. And yeah, it was an interesting realization, and it was a helpful thing to just kind of recognize, especially over the last year or two.
Surprisingly, my answer is not Solis.
Oh.
It's actually Fen from the Black Die Society. Fen is a way for me to express a lot of those darker emotions and anger that I have with a lot of things, because like the last years have not been great. I lost my cat and my mom, and I've just been angry at the state of the world, like this low boil, and it's taught me that I probably need a lot of therapy that I may or may not be able to afford. And it's one of those things where I'm trying to work through it, not through my character, because I wouldn't do that to be Dave, but just things that I can do as this not lawful character, shall we say, but also just, I can go murder people in Ravenloft and get away with it, whereas in the real world, I very much cannot do that. Who's next in initiative?
Yeah, by the way, what it says, be gay, do crime, that's not an official endorsement, just the be gay part.
Oh, can I be bi and do half the crimes?
Yes.
Okay.
I think a lot about, so I did a lot of RPGA stuff as a teenager, and there was no particular character that did this, because RPGA is the precursor to Adventurers League. Many campaigns in 3rd edition, oh my gosh. But for me, as like an older teen, in Texas, who's queer and not out, definitely realizing, I can play female characters and I can explore gender roles in ways that don't out me. I get to have fun with this in respectful ways, but fun with this, because I realized, thinking about 17 or 18, I had this deep discomfort with a female character, and there was no good reason for that. I think at the time I actually played like 2 on an online text RPG that I call something about robots and feelings, is the short version. But yeah, and that really made me think carefully about, there may be some internalized misogyny I need to start working through my late teens and early 20s. It's part of internalized homophobia. That's fun, great. And then I got some therapy, separate from my games.
I don't have a ton of characters that I've played enough to feel like, I would have a good answer for this, with a couple of exceptions. And one of them is Kent, actually, my character from Rivals of Waterdeep. Most of my characters are queer, probably. Some of them, are sort of by default, and some of them are by choice, and that is definitely something that is a large part of my exploration in characters. But Kent is the first character that I've played that is in a relationship, in a long-term, stable relationship. And it sort of just happened that I created Kent not long after I got into a stable, long-term relationship. And it's been really kind of cool, to be honest, to explore that part of what someone else who is a part of you and very comfortable with that is. And my partner's here, and so I'm trying to choose my words carefully. But it's I can point at him if y'all want it. But it's been really sort of joyful for me to learn from him what it is like to have that sort of trust and comfort with someone, and then to play that in a sort of at 11 way with Kent has been a lot of fun.
More like 13.
Oh, like at us 24 with Kent. The other character, I guess, that's been really interesting for me to sort of explore things with is I started running a Curse of Strahd campaign sort of very early on in the pandemic, and we ran through Curse of Strahd, we finished Curse of Strahd, and we all wanted to keep playing. We loved these characters, we loved sort of the creepy Ravenloft stuff, and Van Richten's Guide had just come out. So we decided that we'd pass around the DM, and each DM could pick a different domain and sort of give us a little adventure in different domains. And so when I passed the DM mantle off for the first time, I thought, I don't want to build a character. We want to like keep the story moving, and I don't want to mess with every time I switch out DMs having to get a different character to introduce to the party. So I started taking the party's characters. Whichever player turned to DM, I took their character. And so getting to play these characters that other people, including someone else here, have created and find the parts of them that speak to me and that I feel I can represent and explore myself through has been really interesting, because it's forced me to do things with characters that I would have never done on my own, and find things and discover things about these characters, and through that the way that I perceive them by just pulling a bunch of different well-established PCs.
Yay, I rolled a natural one. So for me, I think, and this is actually a realization that I just kind of come upon in the last couple of months, is that when I built Dahani, she unintentionally, my Rivals of Waterdeep character, she unintentionally became an outlet for my imposter syndrome. She began as this character who had been, kind of thrust into the Rivals in the center of everything as a spy and somebody who had been told to like keep an eye on them and blah, blah, blah. And then, just kind of ended up staying with them. And then as, I think probably the season after yours, Tanya, where we had just come back from jail, it had become, she had started to wonder when her time with the Rivals was going to be up. Because, in the back of her mind, there was always this, I'm only here to keep an eye on them, whatever that means and whatever the result of that ends up becoming, but now I really kind of like these people. And what if they find out that, I'm, not as awesome, or as, if I'm not who I say I am. And it started to become this kind of thing where she would like ply people, not like ply people with presents, but like she'd give a gift to Sharif and then to Shaka, and then yes, Dahani crosses through time to give a gift to Sharif herself. She'd give presents to Shaka, and she'd try and spend time with Celise, and she'd do her part around, she'd paint things for everybody, she'd give gifts to people to endear herself to them. And it was resolved last season that it was like, hey, the work that you were doing was really not ethical, and that's all over and done with. And then the Rivals were like, well, no, we're good, you're staying with us. And it kind of reminds me of kind of my journey, rocketing journey through TTRPGs, how I just kind of like sprang forth into this among all of my now friends and coworkers and castmates, and in the back of my mind, I still wonder sometimes, like, when are y'all gonna kick me out?
We're not.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Look, we got plans. But we spent too much on your character art.
But yeah, she became that kind of, being able to work through those feelings and realize that just as Dahani is there to stay with the Rivals, I'm kind of here to stay with y'all. Woe betide you.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I want to, so the psych nerd in me can't help but point out, especially with what Eugenio and LaTia just shared, it's actually true that oftentimes when we are playing characters, we will enhance things we like about ourselves within that. So wherever you are, Eugenio's partner, great job. The relationship is probably going to be lasting. And exploring those things like our doubts about ourselves, or like personality traits, being more bold, being more brave, can be so rich at the table because we are doing these things to be able to learn about ourselves and engage with other people in a way that's really organic. So, point it out. So when we play characters different from ourselves, it requires respect and it requires honor to the identities that we play. It's kind of a tenuous situation because sometimes we don't know everything about the identities that we try to play, especially when they're not something we're very comfortable with, like just enhancing ourselves into this satirical character that's myself, but stronger, bigger, better. What guidance do you have for everybody here on how to do this well?
I think the first question you should ask yourself is, why do you want to do it, right? And really interrogate it. I don't mean ask and answer and then you're done. I mean really understand what it is about whatever whatever choice you're making that is making you want to do it. And if it is anything other than, if the answer is, oh, well, there's this particular, okay, I don't know how else to phrase this other than this is obviously the wrong answer, but there's this particular stereotype that I want to sort of play into or whatever. That's the wrong reason. I don't want to tell you how to play your games, but that is the wrong reason, right? If you're going to inhabit and represent someone different from yourself, and particularly a group of people different from yourself, I can tell you that leaning into any sort of stereotype, good or bad, is probably not where you want to start that, right? Because then it's going to be a caricature and not a representation. It's going to be a lampooning rather than, regardless of your intention. If you're leaning into those stereotypes, it's going to be a lampooning rather than a good representation. So ask yourself why and steer clear of stereotypes are my 2 bits.
I'm going to be that person and bring up the fact that if you want to do this, especially if you're a non-person of color, and there are people of color in your game or at your table, on your show or whatever, you go, well, I want to play a black character, I will be sitting there staring at you and going, what am I not here? Because we get so little representation, we get so little chance to be ourselves, that even now if I decide to play an elf or something like that, I will get questioned. Or, but black people didn't exist, and I'm like, first off, they are talking dragons, I don't know what to tell you. So that's the other part of it. There's no polite way to say it, so fuck it.
There's our one.
Oh, are we being recorded?
This is fine.
She always gets the one. She always gets the one.
Do it.
I'm so sorry. If you are trying to take the seat or the representation when there are people of color present, there are other people that are outside of your identity, in addition to what Eugenio said of ask yourself why, what is it that you're trying to accomplish here? Because, to be that person, and then I will stop talking before I don't care if anyone gets mad. We keep getting the question, like with Motherlands, can I play this as a white person? And first off, if you've got $60 when this game comes out, you can play whatever you want, not whatever you want. But also just this fear of, can I play outside my race? Can I play outside my ethnicity? We have walking hyena people. Why do you care if you can be a black person? And it's just one of those things of, there's so little representation for us, why do you need to fill that seat at the table? And if you look at your group and y'all are all a bunch of white people, that's a bigger problem than you trying to put on virtual blackface.
I think another thing to remember is that most folks are not one identity, and there's a tendency when you've interrogated it, but if the central component of this character, the only thing that defines it is this singular identity, you, probably need to write a much better backstory, because that's not how people work. It's just not, it just isn't. And 2, at that point, it's become a character, it's become a costume. A good example I think about a lot, I play a lot of Pathfinder. I think you worked on this book, actually. Magambia.
Yes,
yeah.
The Malanga Expanse.
Malanga Expanse. I think Magambia is one of my favorite components. So Magambia is the oldest school of magic in this fantasy setting. It is in their sort of pastiche of sub-Saharan Central Africa. It is a marvelous set of lore. It's a lot of fun to play in. So you can play a Magambian character, and that's great, but you don't have to say, well, I'm playing a black character, right? They see the difference there. You can participate in this really cool thing in the setting without making race central to it, and people don't always seem to get this. The art even shows you this, right? But they're separate, right? I want to play this concept versus I want to play this identity, and people sometimes conflate the two.
I feel like I can't say anything beyond all of that. Like literally, it is come up with a character first, come up with a being that you are excited about inhabiting, and some of those other things are going to be figured out along the way. But if you are focused on the personality and the person and the dragon person that you're looking to play, that's kind of the important part, and the rest of that should not become a focus.
Excellent. I love absorbing all of this. I feel like I'm learning so much too. So, is there any examples where any of you have played a character drastically different from yourself?
Celise. Why are you all laughing?
I plead the fifth.
I can get up from this chair.
I know I watched you do it to Gabe on Friday.
No, so Celise is a paladin, and for those of us who have been playing D&D a while, until 5th edition, they were locked in a lawful good alignment. The fact that they can be morally gray and still be a power game player, I'm not going to say a good person. Celise is the embodiment of what I wish I could be. Because I am not always a good person. And this isn't like self-deprecation, this is knowing who I am. And part of that is also the people think they know you, and they really don't. Celise is far kinder, far more compassionate, and and she's just better in life than everything I am. So she's the embodiment of what I'd love to be, but I'm not.
That idea of playing a character that you wish you could be more like. Yeah, I have a Tabaxi Inquisitor, Art and Shadows, who is, they are kind, but they're the main way that they are kind is they are very intelligent, very perceptive, and very keen, and very aware, and very able to figure out puzzles and problems, and have an analytical mind and a drive to use that kind of puzzle-solving analytics to help people in a way that is not something I know how to do when I want to help people, and being able to, being challenged to be the person who can figure out puzzles when I am looking at this going, I can't do a Sudoku, this is not for me. How do I figure this out when I cannot? It is, they are amazing, and in a lot of ways that I wish I was.
Tanya aside, and that I cannot be a giant bird. I played a wizard a very long time ago who was just whip smart in that I don't know if I want to like kiss them or kill them kind of way. Like, she managed to trick the party rogue out of all of the money they had stuffed into a bag of holding because they panicked and didn't realize how to get it out. By knowing what the bag of holding was, saying, "Here, give me the bag of holding," and then walking out of the room. So having that kind of like whip smart, I know what I want and I'm going to go get it type of attitude in Vera, and then Pilar, my character in Tombo, who is part insert number here of my buff lady, tall, buff, emotionally available lady with a spear character roster. In that I wish I could be a tall, buff, emotionally available lady with a spear. She is she's very warm when you get to know her. She's, she loves her family. She loves her, she lost her mother, not tragically, but she lost her mother, and she's lived with her father, You know, has this soft heart for kids, which I put in all of my characters because I don't know, I don't like kids in real life, but my characters do. But yeah, just this soft, warm heart that I wish I had more of in real life.
I actually, those are all great examples, and what I think is sort of really fascinating is that all three of you have talked about these characters that you want to be more like, and then named things that, for what it's worth, first of all, I actually see in all three of you, but anyway. And I think, you know, we talk about how do you get into the creative space, how do you have the courage to do that, how do you, if you're not gonna do it in a role-playing game at a table with people that you already trust enough to be at the table with, when are you gonna get a chance? Right, so I would hope that you know that reminder is a good first starting place, right? You feel safe there, you feel that you are welcome there with people that you know. Try it out, right? Because you have two things: you have a safe group of people, and you have a level of remove in this game. If you try and do something, and it doesn't sort of work out for your character for whatever reason, then roll with that, right? Then that becomes the thing for that character. But if you don't feel like you can try it there, I'm trying to be terrible, I don't know.
That's exactly where my mind was going too. And it also makes me think about, as much as we like to tease when people are really skilled at GMing like horror games and they create all of these really terrifying escapes and characters, we say, well, it came from your brain. This comes from your brain too. Celeste comes from your brain. All of these characters come from within you. So as much as we don't see these things in ourselves sometimes, it's coming from us. So even if we're not used to engaging in that way, having that courage, being able to engage in this space where the stakes are completely different can be so enlightening. And also, technically, I mean, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So if you're practicing something, you're probably more likely to do it again. So we slowly can become more like that if that's something we want to achieve. And it's a safe space to do so. And this actually, it's almost like, you know where my brain was going? Sometimes it can feel scary or out of our comfort zones to try a character different from ourselves. What gives you all boosts of courage? That's an okay answer, I'll take it.
I mean, that's hard to articulate because, so this is gonna sound weird, I can feel the gaze coming from Eugenio before I say a word. I don't feel particularly courageous. I just feel, no, seriously, ow, I see. I don't know if it's so much courage because while Celeste is not, y'all are making it hard to answer this question, because I can feel it. I'm not looking, I can feel it. But at least I would not use the word courage. And especially for rivals because I know and trust everyone at the table, and if something were to happen, something were to not go right, if I was trying something different, like playing a blood hunter for a couple seasons, as Celeste was dealing with losing her connection to Tyr, that was something that didn't work out, which is why she's now multi-classed into a ranger. But then I got a doggo, and it was much better. So, but I don't know if courage is just like, in my case, I'd say fortitude.
I would say inspiration. I look at the people I get to sit around the table with that have inspired me to give random shit a try, to be okay with, all right, I'm going to create the kobold that is going to be the one that just runs into danger, even though I am not the person that wants to just be the first person that runs into danger, and I'm usually the one running after them going, wait. I will be now the kobold that goes, yes, let's go, and runs.
Like you're Leroy Jenkins as a kobold.
You know what? Idovan would find that the highest compliment. But yeah, I am grateful and inspired by the people I get a chance from one-shots with people that I've just been excited to play with to any of my regular games. These are, like you've been saying, people that I trust, that I know if I mess something up, they're gonna tell me, and I can try all these different things and fun things that I'm just inspired by them to go forth. You know, maybe they have a Playdate character and I've gone, that just seems like a fun combo to give a try, or a fun thing to go and do, and I'm just constantly in awe.
Yeah, to piggyback right off of that, what I was going to say was, what gives me that courage is having friends who will say, literally, just go for it, right? Those people who, I mean, even in the moment a thing is happening, in the Zoom window where we're about to have something really, you know, epic, spectacular, terrifying happen, you know, I'm about to do this, are y'all okay with that? And then resounding yeses in the chat, and then you just do it, like, you know, however the roles fall or however the role play, you know, enhances that. But having that group of people, like that safe space around the table, those friends and those castmates and those playmates that you trust, to just say, I'm gonna do this, and they're gonna be like, absolutely, let's do that. Yeah.
And I think this crosses over, and you even mentioned it, basically with safety tools, especially if it's a performance type of stream. Maybe I'm not bringing a new character to the table, but that moment of, I want to do a thing with your character. Hey, are we okay with this? Is this going to be cool? And getting that consent before going forward is very empowering.
Yeah. And we talked a little about this last night in the panel on consent too, like the safety and calibration stuff as that safety net to stop and pause. And I think it's important to remember that feelings they're signals, right? And so if you've interrogated this concept and you know that on the face of it, this isn't something you're doing that's, you know, inherently offensive or inappropriate, and there's still discomfort, you should probably lean into that. That's a sign this is something important to you. Maybe a spot that you aren't maybe talk about as steady on, but people see in you. And sit with that, see where that goes, see where things go with that. But again, if it gets really big and out of control, you know, maybe not in the game table. Acknowledge the limits of that. But again, it's a signal that something about this is important to you, and this is maybe not a time where you can guarantee you're not going to be a little scared of that. But this is a time to lean into that and see where that takes you.
I love that. And I was curious also, I'm going to skip around a little bit, so apologies in advance if you're following me for so long, but we're talking a lot about safety and about how having a safe space and having people who encourage you, gaining consent, what are other things we can do to make the table a safe space to try this on and do different things?
Constant communication, your session 0, but don't just stop at a session 0. You know, with Rivals, we get in our Zoom call early, and then we chat afterward, unless people have to like run off. But usually winds up being me, LaTia, and Brian just kind of hanging out. But we also check in, and we check in constantly. So if you're doing remote things, leave your chat window open in Zoom. It's a great place to talk. If you're on Google Hangouts, don't chat there because your stream will see it. But you know, it's constant communication. It's also, if there's a problem, don't let it fester. Don't let it sit until 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, another season, 5 seasons. Because if no one can fix a problem they don't know exists. Even if it's, you know, like we talked about intent, even if you had no intent to do something to hurt someone, to offend someone, to know they don't say good intention, it's not magic, it will not fix it. And be receptive to, hey, the thing you did in character is bothering me, and here's why. Or if you can't talk about it in a moment, say, okay, I need time to go retreat. Can we talk about it before our next session? And if you don't mind, Eugenio, can I bring up a thing?
Yeah, please.
So there was an episode of Motherlands where I got upset about a thing. And it was at the end of it, normally we stayed on Zoom and debriefed. I was like, I gotta go. And then we, talked about it later before the next week, but it was an example of, I don't have the emotional bandwidth in this moment because I'm too upset and I won't hear you.
Yeah, and I think that constant communication expands, in the moment, during the session, after the session. But also, if we're talking about things that you want for your character, that you want to sort of explore with them, and you know what those things are, and you know what's important to you, and the communication also beforehand, we talked about session 0, but at any point, if there's something that's really important to you about this character, let your GM know. Because then they will also support you through that, right? If they don't have any idea that it's really important to you that your character is good at X, right? Then if you have a bad dice roll, your GM may sort of roll with that and sort of give you a hard time and give your character a hard time and be terrible at this thing. And that then really, I feel like, could shut down all of your sort of desire to explore this new facet of your character and of you. But if you let your GM know, hey, I'm trying this thing, I'm a little neat about it, I just want you to know that. Then, hopefully, if this is a GM that you should continue playing with, they will be aware of that, and so if and when things do go wrong, they will be able to help you try again, rather than, in the moment making a joke out of it and sort of shutting it all down.
And you kind of touched on a thing too. System and mechanics should be a tool for facilitating these things. They should not be barriers. And the best way to do this, you get your GM involved so they can figure out, how do I do this within the rules in a way that's fair and fun and makes sense? And they can't do that if you don't talk with them about it. It's really important.
Amazing. So, actually, let's talk about, has there ever been a time where you've helped others kind of explore something for themselves in a game, either as a GM or as another player, whether it's just encouragement or one of these conversations?
It's gonna seem weird, but hey, I'm a musician.
No judgment.
I know a lot of people who want to play a bard and would like to lean into the performing aspects of that, and are convinced that they cannot for whatever reason. And giving support to those people at the table, to encourage them to have fun, to just try, to be loud and bombastic, to tell a story, to sing, to dance, to whatever it is that they want to do with their performing as a bard, and that it's okay for the same reasons that we don't ask the fighter to go whack a door with an actual sword, that do the thing, have the fun. And I've been very fortunate to have a couple of people that I've DM'd for who have wanted to, one specifically who wanted to be a storyteller and was afraid of having the ability to talk in more than 10 seconds at a time without ummings and ahhings and losing their train of thought and everything, but that was the character they wanted to play. They wanted to be the lore keeper and the storyteller, and encouraging them and letting the rest of the party know, like Eugenio was saying, so that we all knew, okay, this is a thing your character does incredibly well that you would like to try to do in real life, and we're gonna honor both of those things. We're gonna know that you're trying and you're having fun trying, and we're gonna support that. And that sometimes it's gonna go great, and sometimes you're gonna be a little more shy, and it's gonna be harder, but that's also why there's dice and other ways that we can make sure that you're still succeeding at the thing. So being able to encourage that kind of expression was a lot of fun.
I think one of my favorite experience of this, not necessarily of an identity, but just helping someone through roleplay in general, was when both Eugenio and Brian came on. Their first season was my season as GM. And, there had been some time, can I call you out a little bit? It had been some time since Brian had sat down at a table and rolled dice. And he was very adamant at the time about not getting into combat, because combat was difficult, specifically also for the class that he had chosen. But I couldn't let the season go by without any combat. And so I leaned into not necessarily the dice mechanics of his class, but his creativity as a streamer and as someone who plays a lot of video games and is used to those big, bombastic spellcasting effects. And when he did spells, I led more into, how do you want this to look? How do you want the damage to look? How badass do you look casting this lightning bolt? And I was very, very pleased to be told after the fact that he very much enjoyed combat. So, so just adapting the adapting what a player wants to do, or what a player may be afraid of, into something that they're way more comfortable with. Like, just because you're playing 5th edition doesn't mean you have to roll an attack every single time somebody's going to attack. What do they want to do? Use that rule of cool to make that look really fun and make them a bit more comfortable with that.
For me, I think it was when I GM'd the Dragon Age game that Eugenio was in. Because one of our players has never played the video games. So it was a lot of, it's okay if you've never played the game. The RPG is very different and it's a homebrew world. It's a-okay that you don't know who anyone is, because then it was just funnier when she says Fenris is the Inquisitor. And I was like, well, I hope you enjoyed playing this character. It was nice knowing you. You know, those times where, you know, or someone isn't familiar with the rules or not fun. And I think also the Infernal Goose game. Because I was like, I've made a giant goose. What do you think cannot happen in this game? Run with it. I don't care. I mean, because I'm a very forgiving DM. I'm like, does it look cool? Sure. I mean, of course, besides season and rivals where you all were in jail, I'm in jail, and somebody named LaTia decided to start a fight with people in jail and almost killed their contact, but, you know, what do I know? I'm never letting you forget that.
So I'm gonna generalize this because some of this is from my clinical work. There's also a lot of wordplay stuff, where if you're able to organize play, it's generally an ongoing storyline. At least in Pathfinder Society, you know, GM duties rotate. It's not the same GM at every table every time. And something I actually really love as a player who's been doing this for 20 years, is when people want to step up to GMing and they're really nervous about it. I love encouraging them to do it and helping guide them do it, because you see them hit their stride and find their confidence as a storyteller and that mastery of the rules and feeling comfortable with those facilitation skills. You see folks really come out of their shell in terms of, you know, being able to be social with a group and kind of hold a group of folks together for 4 or 5 hours. And I've done this with some clients as well, where, you know, a little nervous about GMing because they're geeks and some of them were teenagers, and really using it as a way to put, you think of all the things you could learn to do and get better at, and you're doing it for fun. It's not for school, it's not for a job, no one's making you. You get to try this out with a group of people that ideally you trust and you have some comfort with, who are gonna give you that feedback, and same thing, it's worked wonders, absolutely.
Beautiful. So we're going to do the lightning round, so we can save about 10 minutes for Q&A. So brief answers, but where do you all think is the best place to start when it comes to character creation when you've decided to play somebody different from yourself?
With the caveat that if we're talking about a different sort of demographical identity, right, then this does not apply to that. But with the thing that is different and what that means for other parts of the character, right? If it's about being an incredible storyteller, then what else does that inform and build out from there? Lightning one answer per, apparently.
I will addendum and add on to that excellent answer, which is, what is the thing that makes you the most excited? What, not even necessarily what is the thing that is going to be the, you know, okay, I want to be a storyteller bard, so I'll be the eloquence bard, which might be a great answer, but maybe one of the other subclasses super excites you. And if that's the thing that's going to excite them, being able to work with the DM to be like, okay, maybe this subclass isn't, quote unquote, the perfect thing for what you're trying to do, but you are excited about it and think it's super cool, and I want to make both those things work.
I think another place to go from there in terms of quality or identity is how does it interact with the game world, right? Because, you know, that thing could inform every other relationship with, you know, where that character is from, the organizations they're part of, how they move through that world can be a really interesting thought experiment, because it can inform your role play quite a lot and maybe help you move it out of your frame of reference into a slightly different one. I think D&D 5th did a great job of talking about, you know, what is your character's gender and sexuality? What does that mean for them? How do they think about that? How is that received? And I had never seen a mainstream RPG just kind of nudge that sort of gentle interrogation of what these things mean. Because for a lot of cisgender, heterosexual folks, they've never had to think about those things in until I've been challenged like that, just very gently and kind of a fun way of try something a little different, see how that feels.
I'd say make sure this character still fits the tone of the campaign or the one-shot, because you could make a one-note joking character and then find out, oh, we're playing Ravenloft. Well, that didn't work out the way I thought it would. So yeah, check with everyone about tone and make sure that you're not making or super serious. It's supposed to be a lighthearted one-shot.
Perfect. Well, folks, we have 2 microphones in this room. If you have any questions for our panel today, please go ahead and line up. We're gonna go left, right, unless everybody lines up against one. If we don't have any questions, we can also just riff for a little bit. And I have follow-up questions. So if you have questions, feel free to step up. But for the sake of as people step up, please be sure not to tell personal stories and make your questions based on those very core who, what, where, when, why, how questions. And remember, not clinical advice. I think I covered it. Cool.
Real quick, if you're not sure if it toes that line, Sarah and I will be like, yeah, that I can't talk about that.
Yep.
We're pretty good at holding that boundary.
I figure you'll keep us all in check. I have been DMing a very long cluster campaign for 2 years now. One of my players has been playing the same character for the whole time, and I don't really know the best way to get him to evolve that character beyond kind of a one-note gimmick thing that he's just kind of been content with for a rather long time. And many of the other characters, we've had a death and one person leave because she got married, the character did, which is all very fun, and they're all these sort of deep, complex people, and then we have, the silly gnome. And I don't know the best way to kind of draw it out of him, because I think he does want to, but just has no idea how to go about it. So from the DMing side of things, do any of you all have advice on that?
So I have a question back for you, actually. Does this ruin the game, and why do they have to evolve past this? Are they having fun, and does it ruin the game?
That's a very good point. I think the worry mostly is some of the other players try to engage it, and then there's a disconnect there where they feel like he's not having fun.
So here's what I would say. Check with this player. If they're having fun and it's not ruining the game, don't force them out of what they're comfortable with. Because other people trying to force them into something they think this character should be could ruin the fun for them. Now, if it's ruining the tone, something like that, people are unhappy, fine, but you can never force a player into what you want them to be, and you should not as a DM.
I think that conversation will answer a lot of the question as well. If the player does want to sort of evolve this, I think that conversation will show you a lot about how to help them. Is it that they're nervous they're going to do it wrong? You can reassure them that you'll help them through it. Is it that they literally don't know exactly what they want, they just are waiting for some inspiration? You can work that into the story. But I think first and foremost, like Tanya said, is just to chat with that player to see sort of where they are with it, without trying to guess, right? Being direct about it.
And then getting the rest of the party involved in that conversation as well. Because if it's something that they can all come to an agreement about, that this is what we're going to be, or this is what you want to explore, and here's how our characters can help that as well, then that'll be a better fit for everybody else. And everybody in general.
And this doesn't have to be a heavy conversation. This can be something as simple as, hey, we've been playing for a while. Can we go around and talk a little bit about what do we want for our characters at this point? Where do you want them to go? Because it may turn out they have similar goals. They may see the places this could interact on their own, and this way this person also doesn't feel singled out necessarily, like they're doing something wrong. Yeah, some people want to play a very simple character and move on.
That's fair. Thank you guys so much.
This is a really short mic. What has been the hardest character trait for you to adopt in terms of being different from yourself, and how did you come to terms with playing it?
I think for me, it's a character that's about joy. I was very angry as a teenager. I was very angry in my 20s. I have a lot of very good reasons to be angry at the world, and something I've experimented very actively with, especially in the pandemic, is characters that are about joy, because it's very easy to get lost in that.
On the opposite end of that, emotional characters, like characters who are really able to tap into those, not necessarily negative emotions, but those emotions that we don't necessarily want to feel. Because I tend to be a very happy person and do not want to explore those things, but sometimes it's necessary to do so. But I find it difficult. But having a really good DM to say, hey, I would like to go there, is a very good way to do that.
For me, it's impulsive and chaotic characters. I overthink everything, always have, and I'm very meticulous in sort of planning and writing and things like that. And so, your character that I am currently playing,
Yeah, sorry about that.
no, it's okay, is actually a lot of fun for me to just sort of be able to know that the party expects this sort of impulsive chaos, and that is what I can present. And it's been fun, but it has been kind of a challenge at times to remember that it's a safe space for me to do it.
I'm the opposite, serious. Not wanting to crack the joke, not wanting to be the levity, not wanting to, wanting to be there to be the rock or the steady or the serious, and digging into that and not giving in to my impulse to lighten things up is hard.
I don't know, honestly. But I put so many different things in each character I play. Because sometimes I am a little smartass, and other times I'm like, please never talk to me again.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my question, and I'm sure people might be interested in hearing this as well. What's your advice for players who want to experience or explore these different identities or these ideals or quirks or whatever? And it's not that their DM is shutting them down, but the DM doesn't feel like they have the tools or the knowledge to help you play this character. How do they go forward with doing that?
I'm going to do a little bit of self-promo. No, seriously, Monte Games' best game ever, which is system agnostic and has tips from a lot of folks on these very topics. And it's not like this is meant just for D&D, this is meant just for Vampire. It is tips for DMs and players to have the best game ever. But in terms specifically about a DM that doesn't feel like they have the tools, I mean, there's a lot of things out there that I would reference other DMs to. And, also, like we've been saying, have a conversation about this. Why do you want to do this? What is this going to bring you? Is this something you want to explore with your character? And also say, like, if it's a long-running campaign, how does this matter if your character leaves or dies? Or do you want this character to still go on and explore this? Or do you want to explore it with a whole new character? And the DM also needs to be okay with, I don't have these tools, let me talk to someone else. Because it's okay to not know something.
I also think that it's important to remember that not every exploration of your character is appropriate for every table, and it may simply be, I mean, that's all great advice, and I don't mean don't explore options, but also remember that perhaps this simply isn't the place for that particular exploration. Rather than doing it poorly because no one has the experience, maybe save that exploration for a different table, a different game.
And remember, this is a collaborative process. I think sometimes we think of this as the GM's, omniscient, needs to know all, see all, do all, and this is definitely a place where the players and the GM need to collaborate on what's going to work, what makes sense, how can we pull our knowledge maybe and our resources to figure out how to make this work. And yeah, if the answer is we don't really know how collectively, we don't know where to get the tools, or maybe even the game isn't appropriate, again, this may not be the best game for that. There are lots of very great indie games that explore very specific topics and identities. A good example, A Murder Mavens of Brindlewood Bay, you are explicitly playing an older, like senior citizen age woman whose kids are grown, gone, lots of the spouses are deceased. Like, it's a very specific identity, right? You may not get to play in other games. So there may be a game out there that lets you do those identities, and it's built into the system.
Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to ask, I know this is a little bit niche, but for some insight or perspective from those of you who are practicing in the mental health field. I am a former therapist, and I am running a game right now for
some newbie players. This is their first experience with D&D. And we recently had one player kind of come out at the table, and I think that while the TTRPG space and sphere and table can be a great place to explore some of that, it's also a little daunting because it's not a professional setting to kind of explore some of those things. So I was wondering if you had any perspective about how to toe that line, especially as someone who maybe has access, almost a sibling question, has access to those tools and some of that knowledge, but doesn't feel like this is the place to apply it necessarily, if that question makes sense.
So I think we all kind of touch on this in our professional lives a little bit, and that you have to remember what your role at the game is, right? You know, the people I play with in org play and on my friend groups, they know I am a therapist. That's not a secret. I make jokes about it to kind of diffuse it a little bit. But they know that I also joke about it to make it very clear that I will not do that here. And to the point where I can even see something and know exactly what I would need to do here, and I won't do it. I think of one time in 20, well, I was a therapist for 20 years. One time in 10 years, I have stepped up as a therapist, and that was a very specific situation in the community where they needed resources. And so recognizing that role, which means biting your tongue sometimes, and more importantly, the consistent calibration as a group, checking in on how things are going. Because if this has reached a point where that player is working things out in the game, instead of going and working out with a professional, with an appropriate support group, some sort of actively therapeutic space, that may be the time to gently go, hey friend, let's figure out a way to help you take care of this, because we want to keep playing with you. I think something we didn't mention is like a kind of safety tools. When you have these talks, they don't have to be call outs, they can be calling in about, I love you, I want you here, we want you in this community, but we need to find a way to do that and get your needs met, because they're not going to get met here.
Thank you.
Howdy. When playing a character and seeking the kind of catharsis that y'all have talked about today, how much do you think the actual game's mechanics fits into getting that catharsis versus just leaving on the people at the table and not necessarily engaging?
I think the game mechanics can be a really good safety net for you. I think that you can use the mechanics to represent things that you're not confident with. Your GM can use the mechanics to sort of help encourage certain takes on these sorts of character traits or whatever it is. I do think, as I think Brian has already mentioned, you know, not every game's mechanics are going to serve every purpose. But I think they can be a safety net. I think when you can't do the thing, you can roll for the thing.
I want to check real quick and use the word catharsis. Could you elaborate a little bit what you're aiming for with that word?
I was using it to describe the feeling of like being someone else for a while and finding satisfaction in that, either aspirationally or just experientially when it's not you.
Okay, I just would caution against catharsis there, because when I think of catharsis, I think of like a corrective emotional experience, which is an explicitly therapeutic thing, so be careful with that. Because while you may have that inadvertently in your life doing a hobby, again, coming in looking for that, it's a lot on the GM, it's a lot on your group, and it's not the space for it. I think maybe what you're looking for is like feeling successful maybe, and achieving that. Okay, so feeling successful, all right. Eugenio's advice, more or less, like remember the system is a tool that can help you move through it.
And that's another way that you can talk to your GM or DM, and if there isn't an obvious system, maybe there is something, you know, or letting them know this is the specific thing I am going for, so that they can help when the dice are being unkind, because it's all well and good to say, well, my character is really good at this persuasion and talking to people and being charismatic, and then you're rolling ones. And so having some backup from the DM about other ways that you can go about that are the mechanics that are gonna support what you want.
And remember, third-party publishing exists for most of these major systems, and sometimes they'll come with like other settings that have subsystems. A great example is Strixhaven has rules for relationships. There are mechanics for how do you form and maintain a relationship, a romantic one. like that may be difficult for people to just role play out, you could fall back on that.
Okay, everybody, we've actually perfectly hit time. Thank you so much for being here today. Panels, and so that we can come back and do more of this great work. See y'all later.